Hello, hello. Thank you all so much for having me today. My name is Miekina, full name Karolina, and I'm a senior design lead at Microsoft Mixed Reality at Work, also known as MRW. So basically, this is what I do, sort of. So this is a shot from Marvel's Iron Man, where Tony Stark, billionaire tech CEO, is extending his natural abilities through the use of holograms that he has placed in this space. And obviously, this future is fiction. What is reality is still pretty cool. At MRW, we also focus on extending human ability through mixed reality. Now, what is mixed reality? Mixed reality takes the digital world and overlays it on the physical world. Now, this can mean a number of things, whether it's the digital world seeing the physical world, meaning it sees the trees, it sees the people in the picture, or something like was mentioned 2 days ago, where a camera can see that a man is sitting on a couch, but not necessarily transmit that information as we would see it back up. So it is the blending of those two worlds. Now, when I talk about what I do, oftentimes people go, oh, so like augmented reality, AR. And honestly, at this point, I do feel like AR is part of mixed reality. Traditionally, AR was just the camera feed with a pane on top of it that had a digital element. And that digital element didn't really interact with the world behind it. But when they aligned just right and you saw your slow bro like walking on a desk, magic. But at this point, there's been so many advancements with mobile apps that now they're starting to see our physical world as well. This is happening right now through 3D models being able to find a plane to actually place your model on a desk, as well as being able to reflect light from the natural world onto models. So really entering that mixed reality space. The other thing that people ask me when they hear what I do, they say, oh, does that mean VR? So VR, virtual reality, is actually fully grounded in the digital world. It does not have to reflect at all our reality, so it's really not mixed reality at all. However, there's a lot of really exciting things happening in mixed reality where I do feel like those lines are going to start to get blurred within, I want to say a few years, but who knows, maybe even less. Now, Microsoft's CEO has a mission, and it's to empower every person and every org to do more. And really, at MRW, we want to do the same. And the people that we're trying to empower are people that have traditionally been underserved by technology. That is the first-line worker. These are highly skilled, mobile, location-dependent people that often cannot pull out a device as they're working, either because it's too dangerous, also because they might be using both their hands to complete their task. They might even be wearing gloves where they can't actually have the dexterity to interact with little devices. So through the work with the HoloLens, which is a head-mounted display that you can still see the world around you, but what it does is it overlays context-specific things that see the world. So in this scenario, they attach to the different model parts or the different engine parts to train the users about how to fix them. So if that part moves, the whole hologram moves, so it sees the space around it. Another worker that we are trying to unblock are information workers, utilizing the tools that they already use. So in this case, taking AR and seeing how far we can push it. So over the past few years, I've gotten to work on chatbots, voice user interfaces, or VUIs on smart speakers. And now, in mixed reality, I've been working with the HoloLens, but my main focus has been mobile augmented reality. The last three are all that I consider mixed reality. And the reason the VUI is on there is because it does take the digital world and overlay over the natural world or the physical world. And this is through being able to control your home, different lights in your house without having to get up, or knowing whether or not to grab an umbrella as you leave the door without having to even look outside your window. So mixed reality can take on many forms, and I think as we expand on different modalities, it will keep shifting. And throughout this talk, I'm going to be sharing a lot of things from pop culture. I do feel like pop culture is kind of that little glimpse, that little taste into what the future can be, and it does affect what people think we should be doing. So I like to bring up what we think it should be and kind of juxtapose it with what we've learned and how we use our technology today. So the things I'm going to be talking about today are how emergent product sales are a little bit different than traditional product sales, but how the path to get there is still kind of the same. How ergonomics are going to affect how software designers and developers do build products of the future. How behavioral skeuomorphism can unlock a whole new paradigm that right now we are not really exploring. And then I'm going to close off with just talking about how testing early and testing often, especially when introducing these new paradigms, is definitely a must, things we all already know. And then lastly, close off with some different apps that you can try at home if you want to get your foot wet. Now, I need a little reminder for myself to breathe. I do tend to talk fast and hold my breath as I talk, so I've peppered these in throughout. That's my mental health. So starting with stripping the novelty. There's this famous quote by Harvard Business School professor Theodore Levitt that says, people don't want a quarter-inch drill, they want the quarter-inch hole. Now, at this point, we don't think about it that way. We think about what is the outcome. Why does that person want that quarter-inch hole? Somebody that's trying to hang up a painting has a different job they're trying to do than someone installing a shelf. And solving for that problem will really tell you what that drill is being used for and how to build a better drill. Now, in my experience, I've never been told, hey, here's a problem we've uncovered. Go forth and figure out how we can solve it. Usually, we start with some technology, a product, and then we have a problem space, a market share, something to kind of tackle using that product. However, if we really want to solve for that problem, we can't be thinking product first. We have to be thinking product agnostically. So what is that user trying to do? How are they solving it now? And what is the job that they would hire a product for? And then walking back to figure out how can our product solve that job for them better than what they're using right now. And traditionally, when a consumer is trying to buy something, once they have uncovered that they have a problem, the first thing they try to see is, what can I use to solve this problem? And after that, am I able to use it? Do I need to hire someone else to use this product for me? Do I need to learn a new skill? And lastly, how desirable is it? Why this drill and not that drill? We all know that marketing can play the difference between someone buying product A or product B. In emergent design or emergent tech, it's kind of reverse. Some news flash comes out about a new thing, and somebody goes, yes, that is the future I want. And they get really excited, and they start to envision how this thing will revolutionize how they're doing things now. Next, they're like, oh, what do I need to buy to be able to use this? What do I need to change about my systems? Do I need to hire extra people? And lastly, they think, is this actually going to solve my problem right now? Or do I think it's going to solve it in a couple of years? And the great thing about early adopters is they're willing to kind of go through the ups and downs of product design just to pull that future a little bit closer to where it is now. A company that's really going through this right now is Oculus. Oculus is a head-mounted virtual reality display that can drop you into an immersive world where you can be pretty much anything and anybody and anywhere. And they started off by revolutionizing how we think of VR in general. They make these beautiful games that really bring you to another world. The example I show here is a game called The Climb. And even though all you're doing is kind of standing in place and moving up, there's something that happens with the spatial sound where your body locks up, you get terrified, you have this full body reaction, the hairs on your arms rise. That's super desirable. That's not an experience that we can get just any day. Usable. And I mean this different than just regular usability, but I mean this different than traditional usability. The original Oculus Rift was a tethered device that needed a high-powered computer to run the experiences. Now, these computers can run anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, if not more. So you had an expensive headset, then you had an expensive computer that needed to run it. So recently, they released the Oculus Quest, which is a standalone device that's supposed to run experiences that are comparable to the Rift. So they have unlocked the purchasing power of a whole demographic of people who can buy something for $400 to $500 that can run something equivalent, kind of, to something that used to cost thousands. The next question is it useful? John Carmack, Oculus's CTO, has said, we are coasting on novelty and the initial wonder of being something people have never seen before. Novelty. Novelty is not necessity. Last year at Oculus Connect, Mark Zuckerberg has said that in order for VR to be profitable, they need to hit 10 million users. That's a big ask. So how do you get 10 million users? You find the necessity. So they're actually actively looking for that. Oculus is looking at all these different problem spaces that they can tackle to figure out that necessity. What do people need? What problems do they have? Also, Boz, the VP of AR/VR at Facebook, has said that the problem that they're actually solving at Facebook is for telepresence. They realize that people don't get to see the people they most care about every single day. They are separated by countries, miles, continents. So what they're trying to do, everything they're releasing, is to bring people closer together through digital means, which, if you think about with how they came out with Portal and all these other things, it makes sense. They're trying to make it feel like people can work together, be together, spend time together without physically being together. That is a powerful problem, and once they completely unlock it, they're probably going to see a shift. So, stripping the novelty. Novelty is always less important than necessity. Observing the body. So oftentimes when we think about these new gestures, these new ways of computing, we think about how we want to interact with these things. The image I like to think a lot about is 2002's Minority Report. This was something that definitely still sticks in the minds of many, many product people. And in this scene right here, Tom Cruise is operating this giant glass display. There's classical music swelling, and he's doing all these beautiful, complicated gestures. The thing about this scene is Tom Cruise, who is a bona fide athlete, he has run down the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. He has attached himself to an airplane as it took off. During this filming, they had to take a lot of breaks because his arms were tired from holding them up and interacting. Now imagine being a worker who has to do this for 8 hours a day, five days a week. The strain on your arms would be huge. Now this next image is from a Toyota manufacturing factory where they're building engines. Notice the difference. These heavy, heavy engines spin at the touch of a worker's hand. They have all these tools that hang right above. They don't even have to put them back. They just let go when the item snaps to place. They have all these other tools that are right at their waist. Everything comes to them so they can do their best work and not get injured. Considering the body is something that us as software designers and developers will have to consider. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, has all these rules set forth in place to protect workers in physical fields from getting hurt, because they believe no one should get hurt for their job or their paycheck. Well, no one should also get hurt from using your product. So they have a couple of guidelines that, keeping in mind, will help you design better products that have a lower chance of hurting people. Avoiding actions that are below the waist and above the shoulder. There's this sweet spot that is the box in front of a user, where if you can have interactions happen right there, it's the most avoidant of injury. There's also kind of an extended preferred area where someone can lift their hands up, but again, not above that shoulder, to kind of allow them more mobility, but decreasing the risk of actually getting hurt. Also, avoiding the use of extended, outstretched arms. There's a reason that we do this in yoga, and we hold it for a little while, and then we put our hands down. So giving your users that same break, letting them put their hands down, figuring out how you can make flows where when they are in active poses, they get the most impact, but they can also continue work with their hands, down. And to kind of support that point, you also want to avoid the need to perform the same or similar tasks repetitively. Tennis elbow is a thing mostly from doing that action over and over and over. So whatever action you're having your users do, you risk injuring them in the exact same way. So again, letting them put their hands down and work in a more natural position. There's also other kinds of inputs. They can use their eyes to select things as well as their voice. And the last one is avoiding forcing a user to leave their natural position. That can be something as small as having them move their head in unnatural positions, as well as changing their position completely, trying to figure out where is a body at rest and how to keep them that way. So again, thinking about that manufacturing worker, everything comes to them, and really they're able to be in that restful position even though they're actively working the whole time. This was something we definitely had to consider when building Product Visualize, which is a mobile AR app that is meant to create shared understanding between buyers and sellers when they sell large physical objects. So here it's an AR app, and you can place a large piece of machinery in the buyer's space and talk about it together. As you can see, the buyer who's holding up the iPad has his hands stretched out. So in order to view AR and kind of experience it at its best, we wanted our users to be able to walk around the objects, get underneath it, kind of experience it the way you would a real thing. However, how do we provide breaks? So we realized that when a user is trying to do productive work, get into a flow state, we wanted them to be in whatever position was most comfortable to them. So we allowed them to take a photo of the model and then take notes that were going to get sent back to the office, and also to draw on the model itself. So this is kind of an example of what that would look like. But as these two workers talk about it, they have their arms extended, and then once they want to take a photo of the object to talk about it in greater detail, they can hold their hands in whatever position feels natural. So here she's still holding it up, but no longer extended, kind of at her side. And when we did user testing, we were immediately rewarded for this. We saw people, when they got to this part, sitting down, talking to us more, making eye contact, kind of shaking their hand out because, the iPads do get heavy after 5 minutes of use. So we extended the amount of time they were willing to use the product actively by giving them those breaks, so they're able to kind of go back and forth in a more natural way. So definitely, even though right now when we think about designing, we think about, phones have some kind of ergonomics that we keep in mind to make sure that they don't have to stretch their thumbs too far and they can use it with one hand. But observing what the rest of the body does will definitely become a part of considerations in design. Human patterns over computer patterns. So when we started, we kind of wanted the computer world to feel more like our world. We had these big glossy buttons. If we wanted someone to use a microphone, even if they've never seen a real microphone, we made it look super tactile. You can just pick it up and grab it from the phone. And we moved away from this and kind of flattened everything to match our flat 2D world. A colored rectangle with text in it was a button. That was a known. If you were new to the game and you didn't know that was a button, you'll figure it out. So when we think about moving forward and how our desired interfaces are becoming more and more minimal, at the same time, when we think about how cinema portrays our future, it is almost the opposite. It is filling it with as much stuff as possible. So why this divergence? The same reason, visuals. We love the fact that our apps feel clean and minimal. We love when TV looks like this because it's visually exciting. But when you think about, for example, Tony Stark, who is wearing a head-mounted device, his Iron Man helmet, and he's probably flying through the air, and his left eye is, maybe magnifying something. But if you think about what that action actually is to him, it is just a flash of light shining in his eyes. So he's effectively blind in that one eye. Then on both sides of him, he has not one but two different displays showing him the suit he is wearing, with some text and there's some icons. Now, outside of the strain on your eye to go from looking at something really close, like these interfaces hanging in front of your face, to where you're flying, what's 600 feet ahead of you, outside of that, what is he actually looking at? Would this be a good experience if we had to, keep living like this? So why do our future interfaces look like this, where it's just a lot of visual noise, as much color as possible, making it feel as detached from our world as possible? And the reason is because it just kind of adds up. So let's just kind of pretend that we're in this future world. We're going to put on our head-mounted headset. We have a battery signal, what time it is, maybe something about the weather, pretty standard stuff. And we want to look at this pretty low-poly model we've loaded up. And we're like, all right, I'm so excited to work on this. But then wait, you have to also have a smaller version of it and some text that tells you the status of it. Also, you want to have the apps that you work on, got to have that quick shortcuts. And then if you're listening to Spotify, I mean, of course, you got to be able to change the music. So you see how your field of vision is already getting smaller and smaller when we adapt the paradigms that we're used to on our 2D interfaces to a 3D world. But okay, so fine, the edges of our screen are a little bit busy. Let's start working on our model. Oh God, Glenn, stop. And this is kind of the thing that we're used to when we are working on our phones, just constant interruption. And at this point, could you even reach that model that is behind all these screens? So I don't know, that Tony Stark life, maybe not the best. And even though this image seems like a crazy thing, if we're not careful, this is the life that we're kind of setting up for ourselves. This just like constantly aware of everything that is happening around us and making sure that we see all the things. The HoloLens is a head-mounted spatial device that I feel like is the closest thing to what Tony Stark has been using, in that it can place models in a physical space. You can place them somewhere, leave them behind, walk away from them, and they'll be there waiting for you. They see the space around you. Your device that you're wearing sees the room that you're in. Now, I really quickly just kind of put this demo together. This is not an actual app or anything like that. But if we had to think about how we would be interacting with something that is, say, a conference call, we would be looking at the person, we'd be looking at the thing we're talking about all on the same screen. Or we'd be looking at just the thing we're talking about and never making eye contact with that person. Now, with the HoloLens, say I want to move my model that we're talking about on top of this table. And I want to talk about it, and as I'm talking about it, I'm looking at it, and every once in a while, I want to glance back at the person I'm talking to see their reaction, to see if they have, if their eye movement changes, if they have a little sparkle or something like that. At the same time, if I have other things in the room I want to bring into the conversation, I can just grab them and pull them in. I don't need reminders that all these things exist in my space because they are tied to the room I'm in. I remember that my model is on the table because my brain remembers. The human spatial memory is an amazing thing, and in the 2D worlds we've created where everything is a slate behind a slate behind a slate, we've kind of gotten used to that, where we can't find anything unless we pull up that app. Now, so imagine being able to have an entire room that is all those slates, where just like you would have TVs in a sports bar, you can place all the stuff you're working on around your room, and you don't really have to have any reminders that it's there. Your brain remembers. So if you want to walk closer and interact with one thing, your browser's right there, your other browser's right there. You're going to remember to turn there. Why? Because it's locked in your real world, just like where you put your shoes is locked in your mind. Just like where you work versus where you hang out. Those things become locked in your mind. So trying to think of all these different ways that, just like before, skeuomorphism was a way to teach people that a garbage can, was a garbage can, by making it look, would delete things by making it look exactly like a real garbage can. Thinking about those behaviors we use in real life and how we can use spatial computing to bring them back into our digital lives. Whew. All right. And now kind of closing down a little bit with this, the downside of less indications in front of your users is that they don't know the rules. While I do believe that the best interface is no interface, it does have a dark side. The edges of what is possible become more and more blurry. So every time any of us log into our banking apps or something like a hotel room app, clearly the outlines of what is possible in that world are told to us. My bank doesn't care why I'm logging in. I have to follow the same steps every single time. If I'm on my hotel room's website, I know how much it will let me do by the buttons I can click and the searches I can do. The limitations are very, very clear. Now take something like this. What can I do with this? So for those of you that do have smart devices and smart speakers in your home, I'm sure you have things that you know they do, but do you know everything they do? Do you know how far you can push them before you get a null response? Probably not. And this is something that my team sharply learned when we were trying to design a smart speaker concierge for a hotel chain. We were thinking, it's going to be great. We're going to take everything a hotel website has, plus everything a hotel concierge would know, and put it in someone's room, plus make it be able to control the room. Great. So we did that. We essentially wanted to do a quick hallway test with this before we got too far. So I just put flyers around our multi-story office for people that wanted to participate. When the people came to participate, I introduced myself as a concierge to them. I gave them their key, and I gave a little spiel about, oh, we have this new device, this is what it does. I also gave them a little card with reminders of, here's what this card does. And then when we set up the test, we had a digital twin of the hotel room. So if they said to the speaker, turn on the lights in the digital twin would turn on. So then we kind of let people have at it. So this is kind of what the digital twin looked like, and we had all these different points where they can turn on and off the lights, close the blinds. They could even set up room service, a wake-up call, change channels on the TV. And what we expected was that situational memory would be important, meaning that people would remember that they're in a hotel room and kind of follow our rules. Meanwhile, almost everyone that had a smart device at home would refer to the device as their home device. It'd be like, hey, Alexa, hey, Google, ignoring our whole name that we gave our little buddy. So we had to realize that if they can't wake up the thing because they're not used to calling it by its real name, kind of screwed there. The next thing was we wanted to offer hotel room parity. So everything the website had, everything the hotel concierge had. The thing that we didn't realize is since there were no rules, and we enabled all these capabilities, people thought it could do anything the internet could do. So if I turn on the TV with my voice, say, turn on to ESPN, what was the game from last night? What was the score from the game? It didn't know, but why? We couldn't tell our user, oh, we didn't think to program that in. It was more so, the users expected it to know that everything that the internet knew. It didn't care that we were trying to hone them in on the hotel services. Some users would ask about, what are the vegan options of the restaurants? Not saying the specific restaurant, just saying the hotel restaurants. We weren't prepared for that because that's not something you would type into a search field on a hotel website. We also expected similar results based on our sample size. So we asked a bunch of tech people in a tech office in a tech hub city to try a thing. So we're like, all right, if what works for one person is going to work for another. And we were also wrong there. Some people were so polite to this little robot that the robot would interrupt them because they would think they were done talking and kind of talk over them. Other people were so brisk that the robot could not even correct them and tell them, like, no, I can do this, or let me tell you what I can do. And that kind of rolled into the other one. We thought users would ask for help once they got frustrated enough. Not a single person asked for help. Not a single person referred to the card. They would just get frustrated and say, you know what, I would just use my phone, or I would just turn on the lights by myself. And the last thing is our error correction opportunities. We kept trying to have the speaker help them in some way or guide them, but we just didn't get that chance because people were so either into that mode of being like, what is the trigger word? Where is the trigger word? Or trying to explain in detail what they want. And since the smart speaker only remembered the last phrase, it couldn't link together the whole sentence. Therefore, it couldn't start narrowing down what the user actually wanted. So it was a lot of repeat questions and a lot of frustration. So no interface, prepare to have no rules. The less interface you have and the more unknown the paradigm, the more people will expect from it and the more they're unwilling to fail, especially in front of other people. And lastly, if there's things in here that you feel like, oh, I want to get started. How do I get started in these fields? Maybe some of you don't have the technical skills, or maybe some of you are just like, I don't even know where to get started. I wanted to kind of show you guys some apps that can give you a little preview or give you a taste to see if this is something that you'd be interested in. So Google and Apple have both been really ramping up their AR offerings. Google also has an app called Playground. It used to be called Stickers, which is why I keep forgetting what it's called now, where you can start placing digital animations inside your space. Apple has Apple Files, same thing, and they're both like really, really high quality. And you can start seeing what a digital offering could look like in your world, and if it's something that you can see a problem you might want to solve with. Also, just looking up what apps there are in the stores right now that are using at least augmented reality, there are problems that you might think no one would ever use an app for this, but once you download it and try it out, you'd be really surprised. This is an app where you can try on sneakers from your home. You just scan your foot and the sneaker stays on your foot. You can change the colors, you can change the styles. It is extremely fun, and it's never a thing that I would have thought of could be useful, but it definitely is. If you want to play around with something like a Snapchat app or a filter AR app, there's new applications coming out all the time that help you do that in a low-code way. So Spark AR Studio is great for that, where you can upload a couple of elements, map them to a user's face or your own face, and start playing around with them and see how far you can take it and see how close you can get to the amazing Snapchat and Instagram filters that there are now. If you want to start creating your own VUI, Dialogflow is a great place to start. You can start training little snippets of conversation and start testing out on people on devices that you already have in your home. Likewise, if you've had an idea for an immersive world or a video game and you wanted to build it out, but you don't know how to get started, Maquette is a really great VR tool where you can build these, everything is like a vector shape that has multiple angles depending on how many you want. And you can build these really beautiful, expansive scenes and kind of connect them with a slideshow to kind of mimic walking and kind of figure out your vision before you start putting resources into it. And lastly, there's Spatial Stories, which is an SDK that can be used on mobile, HoloLens, and VR, where you can start piecing together little AR stories they can place in the digital world. It's little animations. It's very lightweight. It does hook into Unity, but it does try to take away as much of the coding required from Unity as possible. I personally haven't used this one, but I do have a coworker who's a big fan. And that is it. So thank you guys so much for hearing me out, and I hope you guys care more about mixed reality.
Okay. So we have a few questions, and then we'll wrap up things. So people are very interested to see, you mentioned manufacturing a few times. What are some other industries that you see mixed reality being really important in?
Sure. So manufacturing is a big one. There's also sales is coming up. The ability to take these giant products and be able to not only bring them to your customers, but letting your customers view them in your own spaces is huge. There's also training scenarios, like the example video I was showing, where if you can attach a hologram that is spatially aware to a complex object and guide them through, where if you have to turn a wrench, it points, hey, use that wrench right here. It can point to your toolbox. It can point to those elements. And it's a really powerful tool. So training is another big area.
You mentioned a few tools to get started. When it comes to prototyping for mixed reality, do you have any tips that you can share for people about how to do testing, how to get prototypes in front of people?
So prototyping has been our biggest blocker. I am lucky in that I have a coworker that made a plugin for Unity where it kind of made prototyping in AR and MR really, really easy. But as for a commercial offering, there really isn't one right now, and I do think it's a huge opportunity space, and I do think that Adobe is working on something along that line, but just seeing how many people are interested in this, there is going to be a product that comes out for it. But right now, there's really nothing except for tools that let you get by so far.
When it comes to accessibility, how do you think about that in mixed reality?
So I did have a line I was going to say that I'm not going to bring up accessibility, not because it's not important, but because it's the most important thing. And the things that we think about when we think about all these different modalities, all these different ways to interact with something, gesture, voice, touch, we are really trying to make it as accessible as possible. Right now, there still are no standards for mixed reality, but we do have a team that is working hard on starting to write some of those standards. And we do want to make sure that we are thinking about those people, especially with how well received the Microsoft, oh God, I forgot what it's called, but the Microsoft joystick that's super accessible is. We want to have that power and bring more people into mixed reality, because honestly, the more people that are excited about mixed reality and this tech in general, the faster we'll get to it actually being something that more and more people can use, not just enterprises.
And you mentioned this a little bit, but how do you overcome this education barrier where users don't know what they can do with the product and they give up very fast in some of the situations where maybe they wouldn't on a mobile phone?
Yeah, so the fear of people looking dumb is a huge thing. No one wants to feel like they don't understand. No one wants to feel like they're failing while they're trying something. So that is onboarding onto these different things is a huge thing. But we realize these are new paradigms, so we try to be as gentle and soft with it as possible, but also learn every time a person fails, seeing why is that and how can we make that happen less often. Especially in high-pressure scenarios like sales scenarios, you never want a salesperson to, have their confidence shaken by the fact that they can't move a model or interact with the product you make. So definitely making sure that that confidence factor is there and almost over-indexing on that over things like, adding an extra feature in there or adding an extra capability.
And many of us are very familiar with getting a piece of paper out and sketching an idea for something that might be visual. What do you do in terms of workflow where you can take an idea to a wireframe and then you go and say, hey, actually, let's make this real? Can you talk a little bit about process in that regard?
Totally. So one of the things I've done is recently I had an idea for a new onboarding screen just because ours was very lengthy, and I wasn't able to recreate it digitally with the tools I had to a way that satisfied me. So I actually went super old school and just made the shapes out of paper and almost put on a puppet show for the engineer I wanted to work with. Also, I'm super tight with all the engineers on my team, and we do work in a way where we do discovery and we co-design features. So it's one of those things where one of us just starts sketching or we gesture wildly and kind of come to what we think the interaction should be. Right now, again, being blocked by the fact that we can't touch stuff in 3D is a huge problem. So at work, I've started a prototyping club with my coworker, and we have a lot of great people that are coming in as teachers and helping us get onboarded into how to make Unity feel less scary, how to make these different languages a little bit less scary. But yeah, right now it's a lot of wild gesturing and pointing to stuff, and oftentimes we'll even pick up a phone, pick up a random object, and be like, when I do this, I want this to go like that. So it's almost a little bit more backwards than the traditional way of having beautiful artifacts you can look at, or even artifacts to look at.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about how the team has evolved and sort of what mission you're trying to move towards next.
Definitely. So right now, my team at Mixed Reality at Work, I really do consider as the best team amongst all the others because we've really come together and started gelling so well. There's so many great ideas that can come out of anywhere that we really focus on what is the problem we're trying to handle, and we get into a room and we just start doing how might we's and start drawing and just figuring out what is the actual problem, kind of ignoring the technology we're trying to solve for. And then once we kind of prioritize those based off of things that we think are really actionable, then we kind of start looking at those drawings of feature-y type things and seeing what is the smallest thing we can build. So it's very much like regular product design. What is the smallest thing we can build to test out and show somebody? And sometimes showing somebody can be just running to the team that sits next to us and being like, hey, touch this, look at this. Or taking it to customers and being like, we've been playing around with this, and kind of creating that safe space where they can tell us no, this doesn't work. Or being like, yeah, but if you change this or if you change that. And it's also, a lot of people want to build everything into these tools, but it's thinking about, especially for mobile tools, how can you leverage technology that already exists instead of rebuilding everything in AR? How can you bring AR out of these very specific apps and have it be more commonplace in the areas where people do go? So Shopify is doing a lot of great things with including AR into their shopping experience, and Google with including 3D models in their searches, if you look on mobile.
And we've seen some of these technologies actually come around in multiple cycles already. What do you think is the thing that really takes them from something that people get excited about to something that really then becomes much more mainstream, like we're seeing with smart speakers?
Finding the ROI, it's really, if you can just pick up a phone and do it better, or worse, walk over and do it quicker, then you're not really solving a pure need. So it's finding that need, that thing that people are trying to solve, and seeing if you can make their lives easier with this new thing. And there's a lot of friction when it comes to new things, so it's really got to solve some big problem. And in a lot of places, we're not there yet, where we are solving, like in the sales space, that's a problem that they can't just solve by lugging these giant machines to every single meeting, placing it in a buyer's showroom and saying, do you want it? No, you want a slightly different one? Hold on, like that's a problem where they actually can't do it physically. So finding those kinds of problems is great, but for things where you can do it right now, easier, faster, cheaper, you really have to find like what is that nugget that will actually push this into that need zone.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you everybody.
Okay.